Come fly with me, let's fly, let's fly.
The coup de grace, the epitome of a pilot, an aviation buff's career, is culminating right here in Bridgewater at Dynamic Aviation with your magnificent purchase of this giant bird, the Columbine, which was at one point President Eisenhower's Air Force One.
Yes.
How did it get here, brother?
Well, first of all, as Michael and I have looked at the airplane, although we own the airplane, we look at it as, we're calling it the first Air Force One, America's airplane. We're looking at it as America's airplane, not ours. So I put a deal together with the owners of the airplane, and the deal was basically gave us like 3 months to inspect it, which is so long that I expected them to just tell me to go away, but they didn't. So anyway, we looked at it, we inspected the airplane, and sent a bunch of guys out and started working on it and refurbishing it, and subsequently bought it. And in April we brought it back here, flew it 10 hours from Arizona to here, and had absolutely no problems, mechanical problems with the airplane.
Wow.
In 10 hours, several stops. But it was a very, very successful flight.
Now each of one of these engines sports 250,000 horsepower.
No, 2,500. Each
Wow.
engine is 2,500. So the airplane total is 10,000 horsepower. 10,000 horsepower. That's a lot of power.
Now, if you had one of those Mennonite buggies, which you occasionally see out in the woods, that's 10,000 horses.
That's 10,000 horses.
Wow. Can we look inside?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. No, it's very, very original. A lot of the interior is still there, and a lot of it's missing. That would have been the president's seat. The president would have had a desk that's sit right here, and he would have been working at his desk. Those 3 buttons right there, that's what a telephone and interphone would have been. Those are the actual 3 buttons that he would have pushed.
Wow. And this is what he looked out over, the Golden Plains of America.
That's true, and that's where the ashtray, where your left hand is, that's where the ashtray would have been.
And he probably would have smoked.
He was a heavy smoker, very, very heavy smoker.
Thus the yellowness to the fabric here.
I don't know. But the original, this is all original interior, not in very good condition, but at least we have patterns. And as I indicated, there would have been a couch right here and a couch over here on this side. This would have been a VIP suite, 8 seats here, and there would have been a bunk up here that folded down, so you could the sleeping berth here and here.
Wow. How many hours could this thing fly for nonstop?
Well, it went to Hawaii, so I think that would have been 10, 11, 12 hours. Yeah, I think so.
Wow. And let's go up here.
So watch the step there.
This must be the kitchen, the galley.
So yeah, this is the galley right here. We actually bought one. Fits right in here. That's a picture of it. And we have one that's very similar to that. It goes right in here and fastens right in.
The only restroom?
Actually, the restroom is right in here, and then there's a restroom in the aft, in the back of the aircraft as well. Wow. Then this was the flight engineers. The flight engineer is right there. This is the radio navigator. He would have sat on a chair right here. And then there would have been 4 seats in here and a berth here for the crew. This is basically the crew compartment, rest area for the crew, radio navigator here, and flight engineer on the right.
Well, this is a far cry from a modern airplane.
Oh my goodness, it really is a far cry. I'll hop.
Fit in there? Wow, you all right?
Well, I do that every time I get in it. But again, this is like the pilot's flight instruments, first officer's flight instruments, and engine instruments. Throttles.
And up here, brake, what's this, ailerons?
Well, I think that's fuel cutoff, but most of the engine instruments are back here on the flight engineer. All this is, the flight engineer manages the engines. The only thing the pilot does is pushes the throttles. The pilot doesn't even have control of the propellers.
Oh, no
The
kidding.
flight engineer has control of the propellers.
How far advanced are we now from autopilot usage than in the day that this was flown?
Well, much more scientifically done. This airplane did have an autopilot, a moderately good, reasonably good autopilot, but they would be much more sophisticated, and they would tie into the flight controls of the airplane a lot more than this did.
Fantastic. I'll say, can you imagine Carl Stolfus? Well, he's in his 70s now. Think back to when he was 17 or 18 years old, flying in an old Stearman biplane. Those things go about 40, 50 miles per hour, and they float like a box kite, if you can imagine, really do, very slow. Flying over the rural countryside of southern Maryland, crop dusting. That's where dynamic aviation started some 40 years ago. So a pretty fantastic background. And that plane, the Constellation 1011, built in about 1942, 43, the actual Air Force One by Dwight D. Eisenhower flying around in that thing, all the way to Hawaii once, as a matter of fact. The plane took about 14, 15 hours to get there against the jet stream the whole way, if you can imagine flying over the Pacific in that thing. Well, now we're going to change venues a little bit. We're going to drop the wings, get out of the pilot seat, and head for the hills on foot. That's right, the hills of the Shenandoah National Park. It's going to be fantastic. We're looking for the trademark peak. It's called Old Rag. Numerous ways to get up there, but we're going to go out there, and you and I are going to seek and take two, probably the best one we can find, and that's the one that's completely off the beaten path. Stay with us. Well, the temperature's dropping and so are the leaves. It's a spectacular mid-November day, and we are certainly off the beaten path this morning. And we're on a little trip, which most of you have on your bucket list, but have not yet made the time to do it. Well, I'll tell you what, we're only about an hour and a half east of a major interstate in Virginia, Interstate 81. We're in Shenandoah National Park at Old Rag Mountain. This is the parking lot. There's a map here, a couple miles up to the top, about 2,300 vertical feet. It's going to be a piece of cake, and I'm telling you what, you're going to be fired up to come out here and visit after you see what we're about to do. Homework, yes, by taking a trip to your local outdoor outfitter. We're in downtown Harrisonburg with the manager of Walkabout Outfitters, Vince Mirror, who's actually hiked the Appalachian Trail in addition to many other trips, I suppose. But we are in the process of getting equipped to climb Old Rag, and there's a lot of people outside watching this, inside watching us, outside that is. And I thought perhaps you could give us a couple pointers how to get ready, what to wear on our feet. Perhaps we're a little uncomfortable walking around the streets. Who knows what it's going to be like up on the trail.
Yeah, that's right.
This assortment here, let it go.
Definitely. Well, sure. So I've worked here now for 4 years, and what I do is I draw from my history of hiking the Appalachian Trail and things that I've learned. So one, when I first started, my feet were about a size 10, and so I brought that size 10 and I thought it was good to go. Turns out I should have been hiking in a 10 and a half. By the time I was done hiking, I was hiking more like in an 11 and a half.
So blisters began.
Blisters began, and it becomes a serious issue. And so it's serious for the whole Appalachian Trail, but it's just as serious for a hike on that Old Rag.
Well, Vince, when you were hiking the Appalachian Trail, you probably used something that was a little less supportive than, say, what we're needing here this afternoon on Old Rag, which involves some scrambling even. So what's the difference? How do we progress?
Yeah, for any hike, there's about 3 different things you should think about. One, your personal foot shape. So if you have a wider foot, you might want to look at something that comes with a wide option. If yours is more narrow, you might consider a little bit narrower of a profile. But the biggest thing is everybody's foot's different, which is why we have to carry 10, 15 shoes versus just one and say this is the shoe that you should be wearing. The other thing to consider is the weather and the time of year. If you're expecting a downpour, you don't want to be hiking Old Rag in a pair of shoes that's designed for ventilation. The water will get in this, you'll be soaking wet, blisters by the end of your hike. So ideally, if it's rain in the forecast, you want to be looking at a waterproof option, whether it's a low or a high.
This looks like it supports the ankle a bit more than some of the other shoes.
That's right. So when I started my Appalachian Trail through hike, I started in a boot, one to get that extra support and give my ankles a chance to build up. But just as importantly, the terrain is much rougher than the sidewalks that you're going to encounter in your day-to-day life. So that extra support was a huge help. Then I was able to transition to a lower profile. But if you're just getting into hiking and you're considering the old rag, you would want a little bit more support just to be on the safe side. Well, there is a motto out there, and it's called hike your own hike. So everybody should do what's best for them, but ideally you don't want to be taking on old rag wearing nothing but a pair of sandals. Old rag would lend itself to a boot or a shoe paired with a wool sock, not a cotton sock.
Why? What's the difference?
As soon as cotton gets wet, it stays wet. What does wet lead to? Blisters, hot spots, a poor hiking experience. So a sock like this actually would wick the moisture away from your foot, whether it's sweat or from the rain, thus getting the moisture away from your foot, letting it breathe and let it do its function properly.
Good suggestions. Now, we've got the shoes, the socks, we've got some equipment to carry. Now, some of the men that are with us on the old rag hike this afternoon are carrying, in lieu of a better term, let's say maybe almost 100 pounds combined, so 30, 40 pounds per person. A lot of support necessary. You've got packs as well here, and I see some other. Let's take a look at what you have and what your suggestions are.
Let's do just that.
And think, when you're walking over, think about lunches and water. How much water should we have per person? How about food and that sort of thing for a long day hike? And if there's a problem, for example, the weather turns bad and we need to spend the night, bivouac they call it, what would you suggest if you're simply on a day hike? Remember that movie Gilligan's Island, where they're out for a 3-hour tour and they end up getting,
yes,
abandoned on that, deserted on that island. Well, let's say you're on old rag and a storm comes in on the minnow, so to speak. Wow, okay.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at some of the packs here. For an overnight or a day hike such as old rag, I would recommend that somebody looks at either a 34-liter or a 24-liter pack. That's just a size comparison. So this one is 10 liters more than this one.
Let's see what that looks like size-wise.
Absolutely.
Ah, okay. Well, this isn't bad.
One thing to keep in mind with packs is that they are sized small, medium, large, extra large. You want to size your pack just like you would size your boots.
Look at this, the back. Explain. The big aerated thing.
Yes, so the idea is back when there was external frame packs, you got the ventilation, but the support wasn't as comfortable as it could be. So now what they've done is put it internal, so all of your stuff is on the inside, but they're still utilizing that external frame to get it off your back to allow that ventilation.
Wow. Now with the temperature increasing as we climb up, you're getting warmer, and you start trimming off a couple layers of clothing. This would be a big asset in terms of wicking the perspiration off.
Most definitely, most definitely. Then the other thing that you want to consider is when a pack is fit properly, the top of your hip bone should be in the middle of this pad right here. Oh. Ideally, what you want to have is all of your weight here, and up here, it's mainly just going to balance the pack. You don't want to feel like this going up old rag. You want to feel it all right there. So whether it's 50 pounds or 100 pounds, the weight should be on your hips. That's designed to carry weight.
Now that is a really good thing to keep in mind, because I know all of us, me in particular, I feel all the weight in my shoulders, and sometimes I feel my hands, and it's because of the blood flow.
Yeah, at the end of the hike, you do not want to feel like this.
Words of wisdom, of course. Now in terms of provisions, what do you suggest? A quart of water per person or something per day, or?
That would probably be reasonable, but it would depend on your hike. And if we're talking old rag, I might go on the heavier side with the water because there is no water available up there. If
True.
something were to happen, you want to have adequate water supply to get you through that hike.
Fundamental other equipment. I saw over here, Vince, you have what looked to me like ski poles and a ski outfit.
Sure.
If we can take a look at that and explain that to us. Now I've seen other hikers up on the mountain with an extensive outfit just like this, with the long pants like this, and they look like Gore-Tex or something.
Yeah, so the idea behind your clothing is just like you mentioned before. You want to layer up your clothing. The thought behind the trekking poles, you are bound to stumble at some point in time. You're also bound to get hunched over. The trekking poles, once set properly, you should have about a 90-degree angle in your elbow, Pete.
Like this, huh?
Yep. Get it set up for you. So you'll notice that trekking poles are fully adjustable. The idea behind it is you want to have about a 90-degree angle in your elbow when that is properly set. They're adjustable for that purpose, but also for the purpose of going uphill. So when you're on old rag, you might shorten it up a little bit because you're not going up as high. Exactly.
Oh, these are a lot lighter than a ski pole.
Yes.
Now, is this going to be effective when the big black bears come after us? And I've got
That's a secondary use for them, absolutely. And if you're overnighting, some tents are designed to use trekking poles.
Are they?
So if you're already carrying them, why not use those for that purpose as well?
Now, for us, would you suggest if we're all the way at the top of the mountain and the clouds start to loom heavily above us and it perhaps starts to sprinkle or even maybe snow this time of year, it's possible, November, it could be snowing. If we had to actually stay overnight, give us some ideas about some of the emergency equipment you perhaps would bring along or suggest to, you know, someone who hikes maybe a little bit slower and might be prone to perhaps being caught at night and not wanting to make the trip during the night.
Sure.
What would we do?
Absolutely. I'm going to grab a couple.
Now, this, of course, is for all of you folks that are watching that have not left and are planning on doing a trip like we're doing this afternoon.
This is an example of a one-person emergency shelter. So I would carry this because it's ultra lightweight, but just as importantly, if it poured down rain, I could use this as a rain protection. And also if night hit and I had to spend the night unexpectedly, I could get inside this.
Wow.
Not that it's the most comfortable thing in the world, but it's going to save your life and all the better because it doesn't weigh anything.
This looks like one of those things they put on you after you run a marathon.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
The space blanket.
Yep, exactly right.
Is it waterproof?
It is waterproof, so if you wanted to, you could cut it and make a shelter with it. You could get inside of it and stay warm. Lots of benefits with it.
Excellent.
Purposely small, compact, lightweight.
So maybe everyone in your group could have one of those in there.
Yeah, I mean, ideally one or two people, but all the better to have everyone carrying one.
Set up with ski poles, I like it, or hiking poles.
Yeah, you could.
Fantastic.
Headlamp, that's another thing that you
Oh yes, a headlamp.
Yeah, and we can look at them over here. All right, we can pitch that right out of the way. Headlamp is a good thing to carry regardless of if it's a day hike or you are planning to spend the night overnight, because you never know if you're going to end up getting stuck out in the woods. So the one you're checking out there, Pete, two cool things. One, it's completely rechargeable. So if you're sick of buying batteries, this battery is actually designed to just plug in and recharge.
Wow, like a Tesla.
You can plug it in the same way you plug in your phone.
Oh,
USB
no
port.
kidding.
Yep.
Oh, great.
The other interesting feature with this light,
Let's see, turn that around here.
I just don't want to blind them. This one is 190 lumens. The higher that number, the brighter the light. But what's cool is the darker the night, the brighter the light automatically becomes on this function. So ideally, it's always performing at the ideal, optimal
So it's
setting.
photovoltaically.
Yeah, it detects how much light is out there and it'll correspond to that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, the Lucy lights, we can check out those. So Pete, this is a solar option. What's cool about this is when you're hiking, you'd attach it right to your backpack. And so all day long, it's collecting the rays. Then if you have to spend the night or you're planning on spending the night, you blow it up and you've got solar powered light for you and your group.
Oh, that is fantastic. So that's actually a lamp in itself.
Yes,
Like that.
but it's compact enough that you don't mind carrying it regardless of your hike.
So this is a 360-degree.
Yeah, you can hang it up, you can mount it to something, but all day long it's collecting the rays. So you're not having to carry extra batteries and you're not worrying that your batteries are going to run out.
Is this a brand new?
It's one of the newest items out there, that's right.
It's really unique. That's highly suggested under any circumstance, I would think. Just throw one in the back of your pack, whatever. Have one in your car.
Yeah. I use that as my reading lamp at home.
Lucy.
Yeah.
I love Lucy. How does Ricky feel about that, you think? Hey, this is a neat addition. I think this and a water bottle and a couple of protein bars.
Yeah, throw in an emergency kit and you're set.
We haven't touched on the outer garments, and I see you have a tremendous assortment of clothing here. What do you suggest? How do we begin? What's the first thing you put on, and what's going to be the last thing you take off?
Absolutely. We spoke about socks and that you'd avoid cotton with your socks.
Right.
Same thing with your garments. So your shirt does not want to be cotton, your pants do not want to be cotton. If it gets wet, if you start sweating, that's just going to create a problem. Layering, so that when I get hot, inevitably, like you mentioned, at the top of Old Rag, you're going to put out a lot of exertion to get there. You're not going to want to just take off one thing and all of a sudden all you have left is a t-shirt, because that goes from overheating to too cold. So it's that layering system. So anytime you're starting to get hot, you peel off one layer versus just one item, and then all of a sudden you're cold again.
Great. What are the options right here in front of us? Show us, and then
So Pete, here's an example of a base layer. This is a next to skin layer. That goes against your body. Then you're gonna hit it with this for some warmth. Then the last thing you're gonna put on is your rain jacket. So a tri-layer system. That way, depending on what's going on, you alternate your layering system.
what is this material here?
This is polyester. Another alternative would be the merino wool, just like the socks. It's avoiding cotton. This is nice because it actually has a wind layer built into it in addition to be warm.
Oh,
You can
wow.
feel a slightly
Yes,
thicker
yes.
layer.
Excellent.
But incredibly soft, a good performance piece.
Well, outstanding information and a lot to think about, a lot to prep for the old rag. However, just recap in a mouthful. How was it hiking the Appalachian Trail? How's it compared to old rag?
The big thing that I would want to impress upon everybody is that a long time ago, 20 years old, I didn't know a thing about hiking. Anyone can do this. It's accessible to all. It's a little bit of research. It's a little bit of pre-planning, but hiking is a thing that could be enjoyed by just about the entire population.
And in fact, you can learn from coming to classes right here at the Walkabout. I guess you do that.
Yeah, seasonally, we offer classes where we actually take people out on the trail and go through gear together. We get it out of the box, we fire up the stoves, we treat the water. We want to make sure that you get the first thing right before you have to buy multiples and be annoyed out. We want to make sure that you have a good experience out in the woods.
Amen. Well, thank you, Vince, and Walkabout Outfitters. Now let's get back to it.
All right, thank you, Pete.
Well, we're about halfway up, 2/3 of the way up, maybe 2 miles. It's about right, noontime now, but it is certainly getting warm rapidly. Say it was about 15 degrees, 20 degrees out earlier this morning. Now maybe about 70 degrees it feels like, and the rock's getting hot. And if you dress in layers, as you get higher, you get warmer. You just take a couple layers off, make it comfortable for yourselves. So you dress warm in the morning and of course start peeling it off, and then in the evening put it back on. More on that later. Well, from here on out we're not going to see any more of these because the tree line is right about here. We will, however, see a lot of this. It's granite mixed with a little bit of limestone and quartz and greenstone, which is a little bit more erodible than granite. So we're going to see some natural steps a little bit higher on the mountain. So the Precambrian era had a lot of volcanic activity afterwards, so fairly briefly in historical geologic time. But we're going to go outside and enjoy the spectacular view. And I'm telling you, the promontory out here, you must be able to see hundreds of miles all around. And we'll talk about how that affected history when we get to the top. Well, my GPS here says we're about 3,000 feet, so we're almost at the top. But you ever hiked all day and think you're at the top of the mountain, all of a sudden you look up and there's a whole nother top ahead of you? Well, that's about where we are, but the sun is out, the weather just absolutely beautiful, and I wish you all were here. I'll see you there at the top. Well, we've made it. We're on top of ORAC Mountain. I'd say it took about 3 hours, not too bad. 2,300 vertical feet of climbing, a lot of scrambling. And although we didn't really need this rope, we perhaps might need it on the way back down to carry all the equipment that we toted up here so that you folks at home won't have to do that. You can just sit at home and enjoy our work, if you will. Now, if we look around, this is the third highest promontory in the eastern United States. From here, you can see more acreage, mileage, square mileage, than just about any place. Down here, you have the Tidewater area, the Piedmont area, up to the north, Washington, D.C., just a couple hours away. So listen, everybody, if you'd like to get off the beaten path, you don't have to go too far, and you don't have to work that hard and experience this gorgeous area in the Shenandoah National Park. We hope you get here, and until the next time, stay off the beaten path.